now even God could be going gender neutral. Church of England are to debate whether to stop referring to the Almighty as he. I've been asking the question, how should they vote? Sharon has joined us. Where are you, Sharon? You're in... Good Lord, what's
Portree.
In Portree, and that's up in Scotland, apparently.
Yes, Isle of Skye.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. At the minute, it's because we're hitting a storm.
You're hitting a storm?
Yeah.
Oh, that doesn't sound ideal. In your personal life, or that's just the weather?
Just the weather.
Okay. Personal life is fine, then.
Right.
Shut the doors, batten down the hatches. Okay, God. Gender neutral.
How did they think they've gone gender neutral when the words they're using are still not gender neutral because they both got the word E in it?
Exactly. So they're saying that they should change them.
Well, how?
Well, they're also saying they're taking out of the Lord's Prayer, Our Father.
Yes, so Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be his name. That's going. So what do you reckon to that, Sharon?
Keep it the way it is.
Why?
Because it's what Christians were brought up on.
But then, so Christians were brought up to be sexist, Sharon?
No, because if you want to pray to a woman, pray to a woman.
But how can you pray to a woman when it's Our Father who art in heaven? Hallowed be his name. You sing hymns, Sharon.
If you want to say, Our Mother who art in heaven, say it in church. I don't care what you say. I don't. Because it's just these walkie-walks who want to just change everything we want to see.
Oh, it's wokey-wokes. A radical rewriting would have to be approved by the Church's governing body, the General Synod. Some say the General Synod... Wait for this, Sharon. Apparently, they're sexist.
Well, they've got to be.
Why?
Because they're still using the word he in the words they want to change.
So,
if they want to use the word they, it's still the word he. Why don't they use boy, girl?
What, was God a boy?
No, boy, girl. If they want to go gender neutral, use boy, girl.
Well, what about they? What if they're gender neutral if they're not a gender? But God might not be a gender at all. How do you know?
We don't.
Oh.
That's the point. We don't. We don't know if God was a man or a woman first.
We've got ourselves in a right pickle, haven't we, Sharon?
But how do we know? They say Adam and Eve were the first people on Earth. How do we know it was actually Adam and Adam? Or even Eve?
Well, I don't think we do. And how do we even know that that's a true story? And somebody might have made it up, Sharon.
Exactly. So if they want to go that far, go boy, girl. And then they've got both. A boy and a girl. A man and a woman.
So if
you want to pray to either one of them.
So when the Church of England General Synod we meet at their winter meeting, they want to talk about same-sex blessing proposals. What should they do about that?
Marry them both.
So why do you think they won't? Why do you think they won't marry both? Are they homophobic as well as sexist?
It's what they believe in.
Oh. I think that there's the problem. Sharon, well, enjoy the Isle of Skye. Thank you for that. Mark's in London. Mark, morning.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mark. So, we could be going gender neutral with God. Instead of he, him, it could be they, them, and the General Synod would have to agree the change. How should they vote?
Well, listen to me. Jesus wept, and Darwin is turning in his grave.
Oh. So that's all wrong. And then, meanwhile, TV reboots, because we mentioned the fact that on the front page of the Sun newspaper, and I haven't asked Paul what he thinks of this yet. We could be seeing Fawlty Towers come back. Are there any reboots that ever worked?
That's what I rang up about. Listen to me, reboots, you leave them alone. It's like trying to reinvent the wheel, you know what I mean?
But I was corrected, Mark, because Doctor Who went through a reboot, and you've got to admit that Christopher Eccleston, when he reinvented the character, and then David Tennant, and then Matt Smith, and all these people, they did a really good job with it.
It wasn't too bad until they started getting woke, until they started preaching.
Oh, so you didn't like Jodie Whittaker?
No, well, I don't watch BBC out of principle, so...
Oh, don't you?
You know what I mean?
Well, I do. Does that mean that you don't watch Bargain Hunt, Mark?
No, I don't much bargain hunt.
Oh, your life is much poorer as a result.
I know, but sure, look, I'm there. It's across my back to be whipped.
And there we go. That has taught us. Can TV reboots, Paul, ever work? Fawlty Towers returns. Front page of today's Sun newspaper. Clee's back as Basil, but he's bringing his daughter there. He's 83. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being 83 and coming... But would it be better to come back with a new character as opposed to reinventing Fawlty Towers?
I mean, you made a good example that the Doctor Who one was a success. I'm a big Star Trek fan, and the new ones are nothing like the old programmes. So I'm on the fence. I mean, I guess if it's done properly, then yes, it will be successful. People love those sort of shows, don't they?
Mm. I think you're sitting on the fence and getting splinters. Anyway, we're going to get some more stories from you in just a few moments' time. Plus, we'll see if we can squeeze in some more comments about whether God should go gender neutral. Instead of he, him, it could be they, them. The General Synod would have to agree the change. How should they vote? You've been getting in touch on the old socials. We'll pick up some of your messages in just a mo here on TalkTV. 6:21 is the time. Very good morning. Early breakfast underway with me, James Max, here on TalkTV. Paul Britton, leading criminal defence lawyer, is in the studio. We're going through the papers. Other stories to turn to. The Mirror has decided on their front page to talk about BP's spoils of war. Oil giant BP has sparked outrage after announcing it made record profits of £23 billion. The company has been accused of profiting from war in Ukraine and also from the climate crisis, or creating the climate crisis. I have to say, you couldn't ask for a better name for their chief executive. He's called Bernard Looney. But setting that aside, I do despair when somebody sees a big company that happens to be listed on the UK London Stock Exchange. 10% of their global profits come from their activities here in the UK. The rest of it is worldwide. People see the £23 billion and they think it's theirs. Why on earth do we end up falling into this trap?
Of thinking that, well, I mean, obviously it's not theirs, but James, they are going to be paying £1.8 billion in tax in the UK.
Yes.
It comes after Shell announced yesterday £32 billion worth of profit, and it's at a time where people are struggling to pay these bills. And if we think about what the economics are behind this, we've been paying more for gas and electric for so long.
We have, but there are two things here. First of all...
But did we need to, James?
Well, did we need to? If the government had unconnected the prices between oil and gas and indeed renewables and the cost of producing that energy and nuclear as well, then first of all, we wouldn't necessarily be in this mess. If secondly, if government had thought about energy security in a slightly more efficient way as opposed to relying on Russian oil and gas elsewhere. And the final point, I suppose, is that markets go up and down, and an oil or gas company, sometimes they're going to make bigger profits and smaller profits depending on global markets. We saw a peak of oil prices up to $128. I dare say next time around they're going to be lower because we're at $89 a barrel for oil. Global demand has fallen, and we'll see that continue to fall as winter subsides and summer comes along. So I think the whole range of things here, combined with the fact that the effective tax rate for BP in the UK is 75% because of the windfall tax. I don't think people realise that if you make tax too high, then companies just either don't operate or move their operations elsewhere or invest elsewhere.
No, that's true, they do. And then where would we be if they left the UK? But the profits that BP have announced, their profits have doubled in the last 12 months. So they're obviously not paying what we're being told they're being that they're paying for these energies in the first place, to pass up on the higher price to us. Yeah,
but they make a lot of their money through trading, which has no bearing on it. And also, if you're an oil producer and you are creating the product rather than necessarily selling it, I think people, again, confuse. Shell Energy is slightly different because they do have a home energy department, if you like, that sells energy to you, the consumer. But most of what they do is wholesale. So if they're producing something wholesale and the wholesale price goes up substantially, guess what? They're going to make more money.
Yeah, I mean, we say the windfall tax is 75%, but 1.8 billion isn't 75% of.
No, but that's because 10% of their operations are UK-based. The windfall tax only applies to profits made in the UK. They can offset against any kind of offsets in the same way that any company can if they make investments or if they've got decommissioning to do, combined with the fact that, of course, they're paying tax elsewhere in the world because 90% of their activities are elsewhere in the world. You expect them to pay tax in the countries in which they operate.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like any story. I guess we need to go a little
Need
bit
better
deeper.
knowledge before we jump on the bandwagon.
Scratch a bit deeper.
Indeed, I've just had a little bit of a rant there. Meanwhile, let's just pick up some of the texts which are coming in. As you might imagine, with God going gender neutral, the General Synod having to agree the change, how should they vote? Robin says, it doesn't matter. God is gender neutral because he doesn't exist. The invisible man, God is like COVID. Cloud cuckoo land. Robin, COVID does exist. I don't want to, bear that in mind. I mean, it's perhaps less prevalent than it was, or indeed less deadly, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Does this mean that we now have to be singing theys instead of hymns, says Nick in Nottingham. Meanwhile, this one gets very cross. Oh, this is from Bob. Doctor Who is state-sponsored sci-fi, and it shows. Oh, Bob, you are angry. Church of England, says Chris in Newbury. I think that woke policies will fill the churches across the UK. They're so woke they don't realise that people are trying to please wouldn't step in a church, and those who are fed up with being preached to on everything. Sorry, from believing in God who was a man, says Chris in Newbury. Gets very cross. Very cross. Meanwhile, something else you might get cross about. Here's a story. This appears in today's Mail. Must be true. MPs. OK, before I even answer, what should MPs get? If an MP is voted out of office, so say, for example, we have a general election, the MP loses their seat, what should happen to them? Paul?
Well, they go off on their way, and then they may get some sort of good public speaking roles, and they'll get paid for that as well, and generate income elsewhere. I'm sure there'll be non-execs on some boards of directors.
I mean, say for example, you or I lose a job. If you're say for example, if I lose my job from here, by the way, I get absolutely zero because I'm freelance. If I were employed and I had a contract of employment, then I would have to be paid off, like you would in any other situation. Meanwhile, according to this, MPs should get a medallion of service and, wait for it, 6-figure golden goodbyes when they get kicked out by the electorate. This is according to, guess what, a committee of MPs. The Commons Administration Committee has called for special ceremonies for former MPs and their family and friends. I don't actually mind about that, but I do think that significant payments, that say, for example, if you were to lose your job, you might get a month or 2 months severance, which is kind of what they get. I think they get £5,000 or £10,000 if they leave office. Should they be paid? How much should they be paid when they leave office? I mean, there's a period of readjustment if you get voted out, isn't there?
Well, I don't think they should be paid anything. I think it's quite generous that they get what you say, £5,000-10,000. They seem to be able to turn their hands to making money quite easy. I mean, Tony Blair, perfect example. Yes, he may have been the Prime Minister, but he was able to capitalise on his fame.
Certainly
and
did,
other
and he
MPs
made
have done that.
quite a few millions out of it. I dare say this story will continue to rumble. Blimey, MPs themselves should get a medallion of service and a 6-figure payout when they lose their seats. Paul, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Paul Britton is a leading criminal defence lawyer. You can find him online, I'm sure.